Working with Unity using GitHub, templates, repositories, and commits. This video is going to walk you through using the game production template, using GitHub Desktop to create a local copy, cloning it, creating a project using Unity Hub, and then creating a commit of the changes created from Unity, taking that commit list of changes and pushing it finally back to the repository created with GitHub. There are a number of different steps that I have outlined here using 3 different slides, and I will be navigating between the slides and the programs showing each step along the way. Let's start by looking at the first series of steps. What starts with make sure you are logged in on the GitHub website. If you've not previously created a GitHub account, make sure you go ahead and create an account and then verify your email address. You will not be able to do anything else until you have verified your email address on GitHub. Next, we need to navigate to the game production template. For step 3, we're going to click on use this template and then name the new repository we're going to create. Step 4, if we don't already have it, we want to make sure we download and install GitHub Desktop, and then we're going to open it. Using GitHub Desktop, we're then going to sign in with github.com, and we're going to authorize GitHub Desktop to use the GitHub account. I'm going to pause right here and walk through these 5 steps and show what it looks like using the tools themselves. So let's first move over to web browser and verify I am logged into GitHub. Over here, I have pulled up my web browser. I'm currently using Google Chrome, but your web browser could be slightly different depending on what version you're using or if you're using a different program. I can confirm I'm logged in because I can see my avatar up here in the upper right-hand corner. And if I'm not sure, I can always click in and see if I'm signed in or not. Next, step 2 was to navigate to the game production template. I've gone ahead and actually already done that, but it's a link to within the slides as well. This right here is the game production template for this semester. Notice the exact number right here and verify this is for game production. Step 3 was to click on use this template, and then we're going to name the new repository that it creates. So again, logged into GitHub, that was the first step. Step 2 was to navigate to this page right here, which again is linked to from the slides. Then we want to use this template, click on a green button. This is going to prompt us to create a new repository. For the purposes of this repository, we can basically name it whatever we want. This repository will hold a Unity project, so it's probably better to name the project or name the repository based on the name of the project. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just call this starter project, and notice I put a hyphen between those. If I didn't and attempted to put a space, it would say, hey, it's going to be created with the hyphen anyway, because you can't have spaces in URLs. So I'm going to go ahead and add the hyphen. So starter project is the name of the repository. Go ahead and notice it's set to public automatically and create repository from template. This will, within a few seconds, go ahead and create a repository based on that template. Okay, now this is ready. Notice we can verify my username / the name of the repository and generated from the template it was generated from. So step 4 was to download and install GitHub Desktop. I have already done that to speed this process along, and then we need to open it. I was previously logged into GitHub Desktop, but I'm going to go through the process again. So when you first open GitHub Desktop for the very first time, it will prompt you to, if you want to sign in with github.com. I'm going to show that process right here. So continue with browser. This will send me over to the browser. It will ask me to authorize my account. I have already done that in the past and it remembers this. So I can click on open GitHub Desktop. It will continue back and say, okay, now I've authorized. When you first do it, it will ask you to continue and then ask you a second time to authorize GitHub Desktop to access your repositories. Then when you come back right here, it will show you a list of your current repositories you have access to. I, of course, have access to a number of different things because this is the account I use for development. What I want, though, is the repository I just created. So I can filter to find starter project, click on it, and then click on clone based on this name. It will then say, okay, Where on the local path, the local computer, should this be cloned? Remember, the process of cloning creates a local copy. So we want to create a local copy somewhere on the local computer. In this case, I'm going to allow the local path to be basically my username on Windows, document/github/starter project. And I'm actually okay with that, so I'm going to go ahead and click on clone. Okay, I'm going to pause right here, and let's go back to the slides so we can catch back up. So if we come back over here, we said we did these first 5 steps, navigated to GitHub, made sure we were logged in, step 1, navigated to the game production template, step 2, clicked on use this template, created a new repository, which of course we can name whatever. It's going to be based on the existing template, but we generally want to name a repository based on whatever the project is. If we don't already have it, download and install GitHub Desktop and open it. Again, if it's the first time opening GitHub Desktop, it will prompt us to ask if we want to sign in with github.com, and we do. This will send us back to the browser. It will ask us to continue, and then finally authorize GitHub Desktop, which will then prompt us to open GitHub Desktop and finally show that list of repositories. Now let's finally move on to the second slide here. Second set of instructions include clone this repository. I just did that. And I also include this step, remember this location. We're going to come back to this very shortly. Next, as you saw this prompt, it said, hey, do you want to initialize support for Git LFS? I'm going to move back to GitHub Desktop just for a moment so we can talk about why we'd want to do this. GitHub LFS starts to fill large file support. Normally, GitHub Desktop prevents assets larger than 2 gigabytes to be uploaded to GitHub just to protect the space. With large file support, we can enable that support. So if we have assets, because this is a game project created in Unity, if we have very large assets, very large models, collections of other things, we may want to enable this in the future, so we can go ahead and initialize this. Or if we don't think we're ever going to be using it, we can click on Not Now. But initializing it costs us nothing at this step. So I'm going to go ahead and initialize. At this point, GitHub Desktop is now ready. So let's move back to the slides and progress. So moving back over here, we did step 1. We cloned the repository using GitHub Desktop. We remembered our location. So for me, that was, so on Windows, default location was document/github/ the name of the repository, which for me was starter project. Step 2 was to initialize support for Git LFS, large file support. And again, this allows the support for larger assets up to 2 gig or larger than 2 gigabytes that would normally prevent us from using. Finally, we want to move over to the Unity Hub. And then step 4 was to create a new project in the folder created by GitHub Desktop. So let's move over to Unity Hub next. I already have Unity Hub open right here. I'm going to click on New, create a new project. And I could create 2D or 3D or use any of the existing templates. I'm going to go ahead and just click on 2D for right now. Under location, I'm going to click the 3 dots, and that I'm going to go find a location that I just created. So select, in my case, it would be starter project created minutes ago within document/GitHub for me right here, starter project. Click on a select folder. And then we need to give a name to this project. So again, whatever this, associate the project with the repository. We don't have to do that, but it's helpful for us. So we know, again, this project is in this repository. So I've named my project based on the repository name, and I created the repository knowing I was going to name the project this way. But again, those don't have to match, but it's helpful if they do, just for organizational sake. Verifying that this is in Documents GitHub and the name of the repository. So it will be starter-project and then a folder called starter-project in that directory. Go ahead and click Create. Now we're going to pause and wait for Unity to create all of these files. And this is sort of the longer part of this. So once it has created all of these files, we would then proceed to the next step. So while it's doing this, I'm going to move back to PowerPoint. And let's go ahead and proceed for this while we're waiting on Unity to catch back up for us. So the next things we're going to do is we're going to edit files in Unity, anything we would have done, creating new game objects, adding scripting, anything we would have done to just create our project. But we need to remember at the end of every session, we need to open, if it's not already open, or check the window of. For example, GitHub Desktop was already open previously for me, so I'm just going to keep it open right now. And then for step 2, with repository selected, so whatever we created earlier, so for me, for this example, would be starter project, but it could be the name of a different project with a different repository. We're going to add a summary of the changes, describe basically what changes we made in between things. We're going to create a commit that will be a list of changes. Then we will push send to GitHub the list of changes we made locally to the server. So let's verify to see if Unity has caught back up, and it hasn't quite yet. So let's keep that in mind. But again, once Unity is done, and this of course is the longest step in Unity once it creates the project, we will check in GitHub Desktop with the repository selected we just did. We will again add a summary of the changes, what changes we made, create that commit, that list of changes, and push that commit to GitHub. On GitHub, once we push those changes, they will be in the folder on the same name that we created. So for example, my repository is named starter project with a hyphen. The name of the folder is also starter project. So there will be a folder in the repository named starter project. And now we're waiting on starting project to start up here in Unity. And I believe Unity has crashed. But we can then see over here, while we're waiting on Unity to catch up, it has created these 24 files. Now notice there are 24 changed files, not 8,000 some files. Part of the way this template was set up was that it expects you to create a folder with the name of the project inside of it. And then inside that, it will filter out things that it doesn't want to upload to GitHub. Why this is important is because sometimes Unity creates a lot of local files within its cache, within its local optimization, and we don't actually need those files if someone else was using this code or if we wanted to re-download the code in the future, because those files would just be regenerated anyway. So instead of doing all of that, we've selected down, based on the rules of this template, the exact files we want so we can just work on the code and not use, again, the optimization files that Unity would regenerate anyway. So notice there are 24 changed files. My current repository is, again, the repository I created earlier. Now, I mentioned previously we need to give a summary of these changes. Notice down here, summary and in parentheses required. When we create a list of changes, a commit, we have to describe it, why we did it, basically what we did or whatever. So in this case, I'm going to call this created project. This is the name of a summary of what I did. I created the project. This is the summary of this. And then notice on here, commit to main. We'll go ahead and click on this. And it will package all of this changes and the summary together into what is called a commit. Now notice it changed up here and it says push origin and it has a 1 and up. Now GitHub Desktop, while it's open, will keep track of the server and the local changes. If there's a local change, it will show us this. If there was a server change, it would also show us this. Now, if there was a server change, somehow the code changes, if we're working in a group setting, maybe somebody else changed the group code, you would see pull origin, the verb would be different, and the arrow would point down. So it would be pulling from the server to locally. Because we have a change, the server doesn't, we are pushing to origin, so pushing from the local to the server. And notice the arrow is pointing up and the 1 is pointing up, indicating from us upwards to the server. So if we go ahead and click on that, we see pushing to origin. We give it just a few seconds. It will resolve everything, talk to GitHub, and finish. Notice that there are no new changes over here, and there are no additions over here. This means currently all of the changes are synchronized between the local server, the local cloned repository we created, and the remote GitHub site as well. We can verify that by pulling up the repository we created, refreshing the page in the web browser, and noticing we have the initial files we created 11 minutes ago and the project starter project, along with the name of the commit, created 1 minute ago. So this has been a walkthrough of all of the steps involved of using GitHub, downloading and using GitHub Desktop, using the template, setting all of this up, and working with Unity. And I will walk through all of the steps one more time here to close out this video. So moving back over to PowerPoint, I will walk back through this one last time. So we started with making sure we were logged into the GitHub website, navigating to the game production template, which again has all the rules set up for us ahead of time, clicking on use this template, naming the new repository. And again, when we name a new repository, we generally want to name it based on the name of the project we will be using it for our organization, but that doesn't have to be the case, but it just helps us organize things. If we don't already have it, we want to download and install GitHub Desktop and open it. The very first time we open it, GitHub Desktop will ask us if we want to sign in with github.com. We do. Once we've authorized GitHub Desktop, it will stay logged in until we force it to log out, so we can continue to use GitHub Desktop once that's done. The next steps were, for the first time, cloning the repository created. We need to remember this file location. We want to initialize support for Git LFS, large file support. This enables us to use assets larger than 2 gigabytes. Will be particularly important if we have large number of assets, again, large models or other things we may want to use with GitHub. We want to then open the Unity Hub once all of the GitHub stuff is done. Create a new project in the folder created by GitHub. So again, remembering the location from step 1 on the slide, creating a new project in that folder. Finally, edit files as we normally would in Unity. At the end of a session, if we're about to close Unity or do something else, we can open or check the window of GitHub Desktop. Step 2, with the changes made and with the repository selected we created for this project, we want to add a summary of the changes, basically what we did. Did we add a new level? Did we edit some stuff, add some new script files? Basically what happened. We create that commit that will package the summary along with the list of changes, and then we push that commit to GitHub. And then as I discussed, when we push, we send the commit from local computer to GitHub, and then we can verify on GitHub by opening the browser back up, refreshing the page, and verifying those changes, that commit, have now been pushed to GitHub, and GitHub has those changes.